to put other people first. We're conditioned to this idea of, okay, I've known this friend since I was, say, elementary school, and they've always done this, therefore, it's not really a big deal. Sometimes the disrespect is closure in itself. Sometimes you need to take a step back without explanation because they're showing you who they are. Even if you were to tell them about themselves, are they going to accept it? With this person, when I would tell her something that was near and dear to me, she was kind of harsh with it. And so she would say certain things like, well, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Why didn't you do that? I would never do this. I would never do that. But when I did it with her, time came, she couldn't handle it. So at some point, you're going to have to come up with some solutions because you're causing unnecessary stress and you're keeping yourself stuck.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Woman Witness Podcast on the Woman Witness TV Network, Season 3. On this podcast, we bring to you dynamic stories of faith, resilience, and transformation to empower, strengthen, and inspire you on your journey with God, family, and community. Each episode, we deep dive into the lives of incredible women who have faced challenges and embraced their calling and found courage to rise stronger together. Here at The Well, we believe that every story is a testimony to God's goodness and His grace, and together we can grow, uplift, and support one another. So join us each week, each Monday, as we share with you a story of another significant, brilliant, resilient woman as she takes us on her journey of strength, grace, and mercy. So today I have an amazing episode for you lined up with an amazing, resilient woman. And before I introduce her, I'm going to read a little bit about her. Today we are interviewing Ms. Danela Butler, originally from Seattle, Washington, where she studied acting at Western Washington University and now has moved to Atlanta to further her career. As an actress, singer, poet, she has graced numerous stages and starred in various films. Danela has undergone a significant shift in mindset, exploring different ways to navigate her relationships, which has sparked her creativity. She emphasizes the importance of mental health and has become a passionate advocate for discussing it, particularly focusing on breaking trauma bonds with individuals who do not resonate with her spirit. Through her journey, she aims to illuminate the path of freedom and the realities of this process, that it can be done. So today, I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Ms. Danela Butler. Hey, Danela, welcome to The Well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. I believe that we are all sent here to go, unfortunately, experience different things in our lives. But it's only when we come back and we share them with others to help them break some of those bonds and some of those trials and get through some of those hurdles. So I'm glad that you have chosen to come back and share your truth with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me give you the floor, Danela. I feel like I talked a lot. I talked enough. So can you share a little bit about your background and your journey that led you to begin speaking about healing from toxic relationships and trauma bonds?
Okay, thank you. So I know for me, I can speak on the past year where I kind of took a step back and just really not only re-examining just me as a person, but examining, parties around me and just really, coming to terms with, okay, just if I'm looking to grow as an individual, then I need to really look into who I'm growing around And because it even says in the Word of God, iron sharpens iron. So who are the people who are sharpening me as a person? What kind of fruits are people exhibiting around me? Because a lot of times we don't realize it. We keep those around us for the sake of the quantity of years we've known somebody versus the quality of the character that they are providing for us. And so I had to re-examine that in the past year, and it's been a hard process, and still something that I'm still working on and still processing, because, you realize disagreements and travesties, they bring out people's true nature. So that's definitely something that I've taken this year to just really evaluate that, how it's strengthened me, how it's changed me, and how it's allowing me to move forward and to bring about people who do value me as a person and who can also pour into me as well as me pouring into them.
I like that, and I love the way that you said that, because mine would have been a lot harsher, right? Cut the people who are not serving you, honey. You don't give me nothing; I have nothing to give you. You're not pouring into me; I can't pour into you. But I love the way that you broke that down. But I want you to bring us back to that defining moment where you realize that these relationships were toxic. It is hard. Danela, to realize that this relationship is toxic. What was that defining moment for you?
The defining moment for me was when I was beginning to spend time with people out of obligation versus love. When it became heavy just being around them and just examining, why do I have anxiety being around this person? Why do I feel as though I can't be myself? Why do I feel like I'm shrinking around this person? And I've been going to therapy, and my therapist told me, if this is how you feel, why do you keep going back? And so that hit me hard because I generally couldn't answer that. I just said, well, I'm doing it because they'll get upset if I don't go. They'll be upset if I say this or do this. And she's like, okay, and what else? What about you? So that's something I really had to really think about, because even with God gives us free will to love him, to trust him and follow him. And so I had to think about it in a sense of like, okay, if God gives us the free will to love him and honor him and worship him, then why is it that we think people in our lives are exempt to that? Why do we treat people, because they have a certain title in our lives, that we feel obligated to be around them and call it love?
Whew. Oh my goodness. Okay, Danela, that was good. I'm sorry, I got to come off the pages on this, because you're right. I feel that if I understand what you're saying that, being around certain people, if you feel that there's certain behavior that you have to change in order to make it work, right? Or it becomes like a job, if you will, right? A 24/7 job.
Right.
And that right there is too heavy. Tell me, at that moment when your therapist asks you, why do you, and I feel like is a question that you say, well, now, and what, like what is your next thoughts? How does it make you feel? What went through your mind when she said that? And
well, the and was like, okay, I don't know what else to really come up with. And the fact that I couldn't come up with anything else kind of demonstrated, yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Because I was dealing with it based upon how it was going to affect them, but completely ignoring what it was doing to me internally. And it's hard. It's so hard for me to take sometimes my own advice, because I tell people, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give to somebody else that you can't give to yourself. And so that and came from, okay, you are so busy depositing into people while they're withdrawing from you. But in the meantime, you're going to end up overdrafting yourself because you are so caught up in trying to pour into other people. But who is pouring into you?
Mm-hmm. That's good. That is true. That is so true. Let me ask you, do you feel, Danela, like this is a repetitive behavior, something that you've done in the past, maybe just didn't realize it, that you're bringing it in every situation, in every relationship?
I think it's something I'm conditioned to do. Like we're conditioned to put other people first. We're conditioned to, this idea of, okay, I've known this friend since I was, say, elementary school, and they've always done this. Therefore, it's not really a big deal. Or this concept of family is family or family comes first. But what do you do when those are the same ones who are hurting you?
Oof.
What do you do when it's the ones that are your day ones and those who are connected to you by blood and DNA? What do you do when it's the ones that are causing so much withdrawal from you that is leaving you empty? And I think we've been kind of trained, that it's been trained in us so much that we have this mindset of tolerating certain behaviors and again calling it love, and we treat it as unconditional love, meaning unconditional tolerance.
Yeah. I heard someone say that love is not supposed to always be pretty, right? Right? But love is not supposed to hurt. It's not supposed to hurt.
It's not, because the Bible talks about what love is.
Right.
And nowhere in there talks about, pain when it comes to love.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's expressing to us what love looks like, the only people who are, bringing about pain when it comes to love is us. Because we're the ones who are conditioning ourselves on what we believe love is versus what love actually is.
Yeah. I love it. And I hear your faith, and I hear it coming into play and how you're leaning on that, which makes a lot of sense, because sometimes I believe that we can't even trust our own thoughts and our own mind, our own heart, right? Because we don't really fully understand what that love is and what it's supposed to feel like. We know how to give it away until we like exasperate ourselves, kind of like what you're saying, but we don't know how to receive it. Let me ask you, for those who are unfamiliar, can you explain to us a little bit about trauma bonds and how they differ from a healthy attachment?
Mm-hmm. So I can speak from experience when I say I used to have friends who I was able to connect with based upon sometimes our upbringing, or sometimes based upon, being an outcast in, or feeling like an outcast, in friends groups, or being that quote unquote underdog in a sense of being the one that's misunderstood. But I didn't recognize it as a trauma bond then. I just thought it was like, okay, there's something we have in common, there's something we can connect on. But then when you start to heal and you start to process and take a step back and you look back on those relationships and you realize, well, what else do we have in common besides that? And then you stop talking about, those underdog experiences. You stop talking about those feelings of hurt from based upon other people, and you stop the gossips with, you stop the gossips with other people. And then when you finally kind of have a revelation about it, you're just like,
what do we have in common?
We didn't really have nothing much to really talk about except this, did we? And so we have to be careful. And I feel like we have to be careful in that sense of what we are bringing to our relationships and how we're connecting with people, because, it says, you'll know them by their fruits. What fruits are they exhibiting? What exactly are they bringing to the table, and vice versa? What are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing your hurts, your hangups, or are you bringing the characteristics of love, respect, empathy, etc.?
I love that. So what are some of the common signs of toxic relationships that people might overlook and dismiss?
Somebody who gives lack of accountability. For example, if I hurt you, you tell me I hurt you, and I apologize and repent, but you can't give me that same respect because you're busy trying to protect your ego, then for me, that's a sign of a toxic relationships, and that's considered one-sided. I would say lack of empathy, where you expect empathy when it comes to you, but don't necessarily want to freely give it to somebody else. I would say, a lot of people like to say, I say things out of the sense of I'm keeping it real, just being truthful. But is the tone and how you're saying your truth, is it to help me or is it to hurt me? Because no person who says they love you would intentionally try to hurt you, even if it's something that is truthful, because in a sense, it's disguised as this is a projection of my hurt onto you. And I'm treating it as though I'm trying to help you, but the way I'm receiving it, it's kind of another brick that's layered on me versus a brick that's building me up.
That is good. I like it. And it's true. Talk to me about, I want to know, are these bonds difficult to break?
They're very difficult to break, I would say, because it also depends on the person, because
the person trying to break it or the person that you're in the relationship with?
The person you're in a relationship with, because sometimes those toxic relationships can be blood related. Sometimes those toxic relationships can be people you've known for years, people you've called your best friends. Sometimes those toxic relationships, they come from a partner that you might have fallen in love with. Is difficult because you want to see people through the eyes of your heart, but not through your common sense. And sometimes your common sense is telling you there's a red flag here, there's something wrong, there's a reason you're feeling this way, but your heart is saying, well, that's still mom, that's still dad.
Yeah.
That you've known that person for 10 years, or, no romantic relationship is going to be perfect, but you can get past that. But you have to ask yourself, okay, what is it something that is mendable? What is something that is a red flag?
So what is it? It is a good advice to just ghost the situation, out of sight, out of mind.
My therapist told me once, sometimes the disrespect is closure in itself. Sometimes you need to take a step back and without explanation, because they're showing you who they are. And even if you were to tell them about themselves, are they going to accept it?
Are they going to throw it back in your face?
Right, exactly. Go back in your face. Right. Wrong. And for me, I look at patterns. I look at how I was able to, bring something to a person and how they've received it and how they threw it back. And sometimes that should be all the closure that you need.
Yeah. Sometimes you're not going to get that closure that you need. And it's okay to pull yourself together until you can deal with the situation, because
exactly.
We don't have time to go into my stuff, but I want to talk about the impact that the toxic relationships can actually have on a person. How did being in a toxic relationship affect you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, moving forward?
It definitely put me in a dark place. It actually revamped my thoughts about people in general and just who I can trust. It put me in isolation. I'll say that. It put me in a very dark place, because I'm sitting here mad at people who are just being who they always were. It's just, I was so busy seeing them through the eyes of my heart, but mad at myself for allowing it.
Mm.
And so I was, in a sense, treating the ones that were in my life as, punching bags in a sense, or lashing out. Sometimes I didn't even realize that a lot of the learned behavior that I was given, I was pouring into other people. For example, and this is something I have been working on, of being passive aggressive.
Mm.
And I'm a person to where if you make me mad, you're going to know I'm mad. I don't have to say nothing to you. I'm like, you know what you did. You know what you said. I'm just going to walk around here and be like, yep, I'm good. I'm fine. Yep, whatever. Yeah. But I knew that's something that came from a learned behavior of suppressing my emotions.
Mm.
And so I had to re-examine that. I'm like, okay, you can't expect people to be mind readers.
Yeah.
And you can't expect people to, fix something they don't know. Mm. But that's something that I've learned because that was given to me, where people have expected me to know that I hurt them and they showed me that. But then they was pouring into me that behavior. So I was pouring that behavior into somebody else.
And how long have you had to deal with that? Was that something you've seen growing up, or just in relationships as you became an adult?
It starts out young, but when you start going to therapy and you start to unpack, you start to see things. You start to understand that the environment that you might have grew up in, had been a contributing factor to that. And not saying that the environment itself was necessarily always negative, but there are some things that did plant seeds in that you have to
deal with.
That you have to deal with when you get older.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh, child. Yes, I could talk about that. Mm-hmm. Can you share a personal story, or share a story or example of how a trauma bond impacted your decision or mindset during that time?
So I had a friend who I was really close with. I called, they were considered like a family to me, but I consider the person I am, if you're with me, I consider you like a brother, like a sister. I really go hard for people I love and care about.
Yeah.
But I've taken a step back. I realized with this person, when I would tell her something, that was near and dear to me, she was kind of harsh with it most times. And so like she would say certain things like, well, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Why didn't you do that? I would never do this. I would never do that.
Mm.
But when I did it with her, time came, she couldn't handle it. Huh. She felt a way about it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like those things, it's like you can dish it, but you can't take it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And, for me, a lot of times I was doing it out of the sake of love, and she was doing it out of the sake of her projecting her own pain in disguise of being truthful and being loving.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And there was a situation that I was unhappy with that involved her, and I brought it to her attention. And instead of just saying, that wasn't my intention, my bad, sis, or I did, forget about this and this.
Yeah.
I got things like, questioning my position as a friend. She was telling me how, certain behaviors and certain decisions I made didn't sit right with her spirit. Was telling me things about, how certain situations that I shared with her out of vulnerability, didn't sit right with her. Telling me how, and then ultimately questioning my faith in a sense of saying, ever since I became spiritual, certain things you're doing, doesn't sit right with me, even though some things prior to her walk, she was a part of.
Oh, yeah.
So It's kind of like this having a spiritual amnesia when it's convenient.
Yeah.
And so then went as far as to saying like, I just feel like I need to distance myself from you. But even then, I never got an apology.
Yeah.
I never received acknowledgement, but still had this expectation of, still being a friend. And so in that sense, when I took a step back and I realized, and that was part of what my therapist was telling me, sometimes the disrespect is closure. And she's showing you who she is. Yeah. So why go back and try to seek closure if knowing that's the pattern that was given to you?
Yeah.
And so I had to make the decision of, you know what, this friendship has run its course. I have to move forward. I have to move on. And once I did that, and this is when I knew it was the right decision, a weight lifted off of me. I can't really explain it. It was like a silent, It was like a silent relief of breath of fresh air that I did what I was supposed to do.
Oh, that's good, Danela. Thank you for sharing that. I know that, anytime that we move forward in a relationship, whether it's, a friendship, a marriage, a job, it is not easy to have those conversations, which is why a lot of people quit with no 2 week notice. Come on, I don't even got nothing to say to you. Here, my key.
And I want to keep in mind, it's never an easy decision.
No,
because we don't want to go around cutting people off. We don't want to go around hurting people intentionally, but we have to make a decision. Is it going to be them or is it going to be us?
And that's not, and I commend you too for having that conversation, because I can tell you there has not been a lot of times that I've had conversations. I have always, sometimes, most of the time in my life, just moved where I'll just ghost you. Lose your number. And it's not for any other reason other than the fact that I already know it doesn't matter what I say to you, you're going to still feel the way you feel. So I'm just like, I'm done, and and I learned the older I got, I'm older than you. The older I got, I realized I can't keep doing that. I can't keep doing that. Literally, listen, back in MySpace, baby, you was gone off that MySpace, honey. You would never get back on Facebook, Instagram, gone. And I realized, Leah, you can't keep doing that. Either you're going to have a conversation with them now,
yes,
or you're going to just say, you know what? I'm not going to delete you. But at the same time, maybe perhaps I just need some space to collect my words. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine similar to yours. And I believe it has nothing to do with anything but our maturity in the situation, and realizing that I can hear from you, you can hear from me, and then we still may need to go back to our corners and take some time, which is what we did. And we had to go to our corners and take some time, 6 months, to almost to a year, to come back and say, okay, I kind of hear where you were coming from, sister. I got a chance to pray about it and see me in it. And so I would never even say, even with your friendship, especially that you both are on the spiritual journey, I believe that God will be able to intervene and show you yourself. And that is the worst thing for me. I feel like when God shows me myself, I'm like, well, I didn't ask you about me. I was asking you.
And it has to be a willingness. But there has to be a willingness to hear it.
Correct.
And, and the strength to hear it, because a lot of times people don't want to know about themselves, even from the Heavenly Father, because it's just like, okay, I have to, because at some point, God has to make sure that you're walking in your obedience, so that way He can, okay, you did what you need to do. Now I can go and get them.
Come on, Danela, you right.
Yeah, right. Because if we just sit there and we just cut people off with no explanation, no attempt to try to mend fences, then God's gonna be like, okay, you praying about wanting me to get them, but I gotta add you, because I gotta get you too.
I gotta get you,
because you being just as disobedient.
Come on. That's why I stopped. I'm like, Lord, let me stop asking you something. No, I'm playing.
But God's gonna honor you. But God's gonna honor you for your efforts, and having those conversations or attempting to have those conversations. And at some point you're just like, okay, now I gotta give you up, but I gotta give you up to God.
Yes. Come on. Okay. Let's talk to us about rebuilding and moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone start to rebuild their self-worth and their confidence after leaving a toxic relationship?
Learning to give yourself grace. You have to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
You have to learn and understand what you deserve. Is this something that is this something that you would want for yourself? Mm-hmm. And you have to think about how many times am I complaining and how many times am I praising about, a certain situation. If one outweighs the other, then, like if I'm giving more praises than complaints, then I would say it's salvageable.
Yeah.
If I'm doing more complaints than I am with praises, then we need to reevaluate. But that's, I think, is a individual decision.
Give us some advice, Danela. How long can we sit in our complaints?
So
how long is long enough to sit there complaining in our self-pity?
We can sit there as long as we want to, but at the end of the day, it's not going to benefit you or anybody else. At some point, you're going to have to come up with some solutions because you're causing unnecessary stress and you're keeping yourself stuck. You're not allowing yourself for growth because you're caught up in a situation. It's called arrested development. You're causing yourself to remain in a mindset of what a person did, why they did it, versus, okay, they did it, they meant it. Yeah. How can we move on here to where it builds you up? Yeah. How can we build up your mindset? How can it make you more powerful in your loving of other people who actually do value you as a person? Because it's not, and then I want to be clear, it's okay to complain. However, it's not okay to complain without there being solutions present. You gotta, at some point,
or be willing to accept the solutions.
Exactly. Okay, I'm here, but what can I do next?
How can someone lean into their faith, Danela? For me, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask you. I feel like you've been in church all your life, honey. If you have somebody who has not, how can you tell them, what advice would you give them and how to lean on that faith and find hope where they feel there is no hope? I keep getting into these same relationships. These patterns continue. It must be me. How do I find faith through that all?
Think about the love of the Father and what you deserve.
But what if I don't know? Tell me if I don't know. I don't know that. Tell them where to start, Danela.
I would say, honestly, I wouldn't tell them anything. I would just show it. Sometimes it's better to show the Spirit. Sometimes it's better to show the Spirit than to talk about it. And then once you get that opportunity to talk about it, that seed is already planted because of your actions. Because sometimes, even as believers, we don't always understand. But to give it to somebody else, sometimes it's easier to show somebody the love of the Father versus talking about the Father. Because sometimes people are not really open and really have a guard up in that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Love it, Danela. See, I told you you've been in church. I'm like, girl, I love it. Let them use you. Okay. I want one more advice from you. What are some signs? What are some signs that someone has truly begun that healing process in that toxic relationship? How do you know that, okay, I can now move forward and trust my own judgment, my own discernment again?
I would say, speaking from my own journey, I'm able to embrace other people into my life and really adopt their love and their respect and their empathy. I would say when you acknowledge the past, but you don't let the past keep you chained and bound anymore, where you can love a person from where they are, but love them in a place to where it's not necessarily where you are in that sense. Like, learning to accept people for being people, because people gonna people.
Yes.
But you don't allow it to taint your mind, your heart, and your spirit. I think that's where you begin to see an inner peace within yourself, and you begin to see the process of healing work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people believe that it happens in one day because we've been taught that, you have to forgive them and move forward. Forgiveness is a verb. Forgiveness is an ongoing process, because there are times where you forgive somebody, but then a memory comes up and you mad all over again.
Yeah.
But you don't let it chain you. You acknowledge it, but you keep living.
Yes. I love it. Danela, that's so good. Whew. And that is, I believe that is the best advice. And it's a good place to put a pin and leave it there. Trust yourself. Listen to yourself. You know what to look for. You know what is right. You know how you felt. You know how you don't want to feel again. I love it. Danela, let me give the floor back to you. If you can just leave our listeners with something to take with them throughout the week, something that they can just pull from this soundbite of this conversation that they can take with them.
Your feelings are valid, and you are worth it. You are worth healthy relationships, not just with people, but relationship with yourself. Allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to be, allow yourself to live, and give yourself grace, because life be life and people gon' people. But it doesn't take away the fact that you're still human and you're still loved and you're still valued.
Yes, ma'am. Ooh, love it, love it, love it. Oh, Danela, you're so sweet and beautiful inside and out. And I absolutely adore you for coming here and being vulnerable and sharing us your journey and being a witness. Tell us where we can find you, follow you. If someone is watching this right now and they need a singer, they need an actress, they need a person to fill in for a role, where can I find you?
So find me on Facebook, Danela Butler, simple as that. You can find me on IG, Danela_Butler official. Be on the lookout for upcoming fun projects soon. I'm just in the process of finishing up a book called The Pearl, Unveiling the Strength Within. So be on the lookout for that. I'm excited about it, and I can't wait for the unveiling of that. But just I would say those two places you can find me.
All right. And then I will definitely put it and keep it in the description below. Ladies, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Woman Witness podcast on the Woman Witness TV network. Thank you to my guest, Danela Butler. You came and poured today, honey, and I thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Woman Witness podcast of Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fourier. Perhaps you were chosen for such a time as this to write, to tell your story, your truth. Until next time, bye-bye.